Eglinton Street is the western boundary of the Greater Gorbals area, and the Bedford and Coliseum cinemas stood here as well as the Eglinton Electrium. The EE's is gone now, and the Bedford now stands empty and closed, but the Coliseum battles on as a bingo hall. The Coliseum was the first picture hall in the Gorbals to show a talking film. Eglinton Street ran up to the Toll and into Pollokshaws Road. At Eglinton Toll stood the Plaza Ballroom, a popular dance hall in the past. It still stands but is no longer the upmarket venue it once was. Beyond the Plaza Ballroom took you into what was in the past the more affluent area of Govan Hill. For Gorbals kids, perhaps a few adults too, Govan Hill was the place where you wanted to go midgie raking.
I remember me and Bill went up to Govan Hill to see what we could find in their bins, with holes in their saunies, the arse out our trousers and licking snotters with the tap of our lips. But that was years ago in bygone days of old. As I sit here in my house looking back, and I'll never forget, lest I get a big head, that I'm just wee midgie raker at heart.
Eglinton Street ran parallel to the West Coast Railway line and down to Bridge Street, home of many businesses including insurance companies. Most people, regardless of their status, had some kind of life insurance policy, if only to pay for their burial, and a common sight around the streets of the Gorbals was the society man. Adjacent to Eglinton Street stood Abbotsford Place, once one of the most sought-after addresses in the Gorbals. The well-known Janine's Hotel stood here, and there were many splendid buildings housing professional people from doctors and dentists to teachers. Tragically, every single dwelling in Abbotsford Place was demolished by a short-sighted city council, and the only structure left standing was Abbotsford School. It still stands today and is almost 120 years old, but sadly the school was closed in 1997. There were many schools in the Gorbals, including Camden Street, Buchan Street, Hayfield Street, St Luke's and Adelphi Terrace, but one character remained constant in them all.
He was Danny the Janny at Buchan Street School, with a face as miserable as sin. Boy, said he didn't, but I saw him break the window, and that's why I'm reporting him. He said the schools were full of wee buggers who'd all grow up to be burglars and muggers. Education was wasted in Wayne's, he'd say. They called him cynical and tight-fisted and greeting-faced and twisted, but so might you be if you could put up with him all day.
School days are remembered fondly by some and less so by many others, for in the past, with disease and poverty so rife, many children never made it to school at all. Pictured here is local historian Ellen McAllister's aunt, who died at a very young age from a disease rarely seen today, bubonic plague. Most families in the Gorbals were large, but many children died young. Of course, growing up in the Gorbals, as in many other places, children were not aware that they were deprived of anything. Children then, like children now, take life as they find it. Close by Abbotsford Place stood Surrey Street. The picture from the past has hardly changed over the years, although the grain mill in the distance is gone now. Opposite Surrey Street is Pollokshaws Road, leading to the junction at Cumberland Street. This is Cumberland Street, the only street in the Gorbals which links Lauriston and Hutchison Town in a single street, and runs from Eglinton Street in the west all the way along through Hutchison Town, where it eventually turns and joins Caledonia Road. Streets such as Matheson Street and Sandy Falls Street run off Cumberland Street. Like Crown Street, Cumberland Street was a main shopping thoroughfare in the past, with many shops. It also housed the Paragon Picture Hall. On the west side of Cumberland Street, near Eglinton Street, stood the railway station. Underneath the station there used to be a grocer's shop. During the war it was a target for young boys and girls looking to supplement their rations.
I walked like a cowboy, but I was really a bad boy when I raided the old grocer's shop. I was looking for food to supplement the ration book, and instead of that, guess what I got? On a jar, on a shelf in the back of the store was a pile of old threepenny bits. My eyes bulged out of their sockets as I filled up my pockets, and I thought, now I'm rich. The problem, you see, was I could hardly walk as the weight of those threepenny bits slowed me up. Out the window, did a shimmy, scared the police would show. Walking like a pregnant pup, I got away, but I really must say I never did another raid again. It was a hell of a bother to explain to my mother where I got my ill-gotten gains.
One of the main landmarks on Cumberland Street was St Francis Church. Although it was feared this magnificent building might also be reduced to dust, wiser heads prevailed and the decision was taken to completely refurbish the structure, and it reopened in 1998 as a community arts and education centre. In the past, Matheson Street and Sandy Fall Street ran past the church. Both streets are now almost totally obliterated, although the church building survived. St Francis once also had a school attached, but this is gone now. In the future, the building will be surrounded by new housing as the city father's vision of a new Gorbals urban village rapidly begins to take shape in the area. But while St Francis has been saved, the many shops which once lined Cumberland Street in the past have almost completely vanished. Old Rutherglen Road was one of the main roads running the length of Hutchison Town, from Gorbals Street all the way to the River Clyde in the east. Like Cumberland Street and Crown Street, Old Rutherglen Road once housed many shops and pubs. Local artist Tommy Smith has captured a winter scene here that reminds everyone that the Gorbals of the past was not in black and white, only the photographs were. And for local colour, you only had to look towards another thriving business in the old Gorbals. For all that there was little money around, people still liked to look their best, and the Gorbals had a veritable host of barber shops dotted all over the area. Old Rutherglen Road also held one of the most famous businesses in the Gorbals and other areas of Glasgow, the ubiquitous pawnbroker. It also housed one of the more unusual business premises in the Gorbals, and one of the most well-known of characters. Few people would have this occupation on their CV nowadays.
His name was Joseph Roper, and he was the Gorbals hen choker. He worked in the all-steamy pen, wringing necks and plucking feathers, working away in all weathers. That line of chickens never seemed to end. But now he's on a pension and pills for water retention. With arthritis in each killing horn, all the years of choking has left him worn out and broken. He wished he'd been a plumber instead.
The Tumax factory in Old Rutherglen Road is another building which has survived the bulldozer. Although it too lay empty for some time, it was completely renovated and now holds the staff of the City Council's housing and social work departments besides small business units. Opposite the Tumax is the old Rose Garden, once the haunt not of ghosts but Gorbals kids. The garden is now part park and part cemetery, and the gravestones along the walls give you an indication of just how old the ground is. Despite the massive upheaval out with its walls, the little rose garden has remained remarkably untouched over the years. Ballater Street runs parallel to the River Clyde from Gorbals Cross to Bridgeton. It was previously known as Govan Street, because in the past if you followed the road for miles in a westerly direction, you would eventually find yourself in the old borough by the Clyde. But like many Gorbals street names, it underwent a change. The suspension bridge on Ballater Street opposite McNeill Street spans the River Clyde and leads you to the People's Palace and Winter Gardens in Glasgow Green. Gorbals workers in the old Templeton carpet factory could trudge home across this bridge, and the same workers would skip lightly over it at weekends for the many events that used to be held on the green. The old library building on McNeill Street just off Ballater Street still stands and is used by local groups and businesses. As it too runs almost the length of the Gorbals, Ballater Street was intersected all along its length by smaller streets, like Moffat Street. The old Adelphi School on Ballater Street is now a business and education centre, and a new sports centre has been built beside it on the site of the old Hairworks. Also on Ballater Street is the College of Nautical Studies and the old St Luke's Church. St Luke's School, which once adjoined the church, is gone, but you can still see some of the original stone building. Also on Ballater Street was Green's Picture Playhouse, where many a Gorbals couple first got to know each other.